Chris, I have a question regarding your recent study on Revelation 9, verses 2 and 3, and Revelation 15, verse 8. And how can we correlate the smoke of these two different structures? I wanted to know, how can we explain the wrath of God as a result of the smoke coming out of the abyss when the abyss is open?
The bottomless pit is where Satan was bound, and Satan was placed there out of the wrath of God. And the pit, the bottomless pit, is also that word translated as deep. Remember in Romans 10, verse 7, or who shall descend into the deep? That is to bring up Christ again from the dead. So the pit is a place where Satan was bound and under the wrath of God. The pit, the deep, is a place Christ spiritually experienced as he died for the sins of his people, and that indicates the wrath of God. The pit is the place that identifies with the dead and hell. So the smoke was in the pit because God's anger was burning against Satan and the fallen angels. It just indicates that God's anger has been poured out previously, and now that anger has risen. It is now time, as Christ died for the sins of his people from the foundation of the world and in a sense went into that pit. Now it's time to bring judgment on the world, but God does not cast the unsaved into the pit according to this language, but the smoke rises, and what happens is that the world takes upon itself the condition of the pit. The world becomes identified with death and hell. And so when we read in Revelation 15, verse 8, and the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no man was able to enter into the temple. That's an important statement. That is indicating that God has completed his spiritual temple, which is made up of that whole company of the elect, and then the temple is complete. And the figure is that the glory of God, just like historically when Solomon's temple was completed, the glory of God, his presence, entered the temple. And we also read of smoke or a cloud that filled the temple, so no man could enter it, and the priests even had to come out, just as the 7 messengers in Revelation 15 come out of the temple, and they're actually true believers who are spiritual priests, and they're going forth to perform the priestly function. And so it's using the same word, the same Greek word for smoke, because the picture is that since no man is able to enter into the temple, that the door of heaven is shut, and that's a result of the wrath of God. It's now on the inhabitants of the world. And, God doesn't always draw the same picture, but it's teaching the same truth, that from the anger and wrath of God comes forth the people of God. In Revelation 15's case, 7 messengers pouring out the 7 last vials. In Revelation 9's case, locusts who are going forth to consume seed and fruit and make the land barren and desolate. And yet it's just focusing on different aspects of the same judgment.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yes, it makes a lot of sense now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing up those verses.